There you go.
Marty Cooper, not a name you're likely to be familiar with. His invention, well, billions of us most intimately are. The portable cell phone, embodied first in this handset built by Marty and his team at a nimble startup called Motorola. This 2-kilo hunk of heft was the culmination of years of work, a philosophical leap of faith away from the prevailing thinking by the industry giant Bell Labs and parent company AT&T, whose vision was simply to put cell phones in cars.
For 100 years, we had been trapped in our homes, leashed to our desk by this copper wire. Now was the time to set us free, and trapping us in our cars was not an improvement. We had to create a dazzling demonstration, and that was the real reason. The real reason for creating this phone was to prove to the world that a little company like Motorola had credibility. And that's what we did in New York and in Washington. We did what turned out to be a dazzling demonstration that the time was ready for personal portable communications.
And it was using a phone very similar to this. This is essentially a replica of what you used.
That's correct.
What did you say on that first mobile phone call?
Well, I was talking to a journalist just like you, and I tried to think
How
of something.
disappointing.
Yeah, clever to do. So I called my counterpart at Bell Laboratories, a fellow named Dr. Joel Engel, a very bright guy, and he ran all of the AT&T program. Very important and responsible job. And I told him, Joel, it's Marty, and I'm calling you from a cell phone, but a real cell phone, a handheld, personal, portable cell phone. And there was silence at the other end of the line, and I'm
That's
certain,
a bit worrying.
Knowing Joel, I'm certain that he was polite, but to this day he doesn't remember that call. And I'm not
You're sure
certain.
he was actually there? There was somebody at the other end, was there?
Oh, yes, yes, there was. Yeah, I'm certain there was.
And had you given it a lot of thought before you actually made that call, what you were going to say? Was that the kind of Neil Armstrong moment on the ground with mobile telephony?
It was spontaneous, and I'm sure that Joel would rather I had not had that spontaneity.
How much did you profit personally from your invention? How far?
Well, in terms of satisfaction, enormously. When I joined Motorola, I signed a document that said that all of my future inventions were the property of Motorola, and for that they gave me $1. And it was the best bargain that I ever made. Motorola treated me very well, and the world has been very nice to me.
So here we are 40 years on, with handsets that seem to be capable of launching a spaceship, and yet some of the fundamentals about the mobile phone industry don't seem to have been addressed. Even in the so-called developed world, in the middle of a big metropolis, you get drop calls, you can't get network coverage, even in your own house, which may be, you know, a few miles outside of a big city. Has the industry got it all wrong?
Oh, I think so. They have not attacked the fundamentals. Even today, most people around the world, and you know that well over 5 billion people have cell phones today. That's,
wow.
I mean,
that's
most of the people
over 2/3 of the world
on
population.
Earth,
That's amazing.
and most of them still talk, and the ones that don't still text.
Right.
And yet the emphasis of the carriers has been to market speed. And yet the technology exists today, and it's being adopted slowly, but more slowly than you and I would prefer, that would give us really solid coverage and increase the capacity of a system. When you in London get a dropped call, it's because somehow in the cell that you're in you have run out of capacity. And yet the technology exists to fix that problem. And incidentally, that technology even saves money. But the emphasis of the carriers has been on the novelty of high speed, of internet access, of all these new applications.
Novelty sells, right? Saying that you get slightly better network coverage probably doesn't sound as sexy, does it, to the average consumer?
Well, I'm optimistic, Richard. Those problems are going to be solved. Believe it or not, we are a very young industry. 40 years, and actually commercial service has only been 30 years. It's not a long time in the annals of technology. Those problems are going to be fixed.
So we've talked a little bit about features of handsets and networks. Where do you see handsets and mobile phones taking us next?
There are so many things that can be accomplished when a human being is connected to the rest of the world. But the one that's most exciting to me is the medical revolution, because now we have the capability of measuring things on your body, of actually doing a physical examination every 30 seconds instead of every year, or in my case, every 5 years, and actually understand what diseases are starting to form in your body before they become diseases.
That would be incredible.
People will remain healthy for most of their lives. It's going to take a generation or two, but that's going to happen. But it's started already, and I want to show you some examples. One of the biggest causes of death in Western civilization is congestive heart failure. And yet, we know how to anticipate that. Congestive heart failure means you're accumulating fluid in your lungs. Here's a patch that a person can wear on their body. May have to change it out every week or so. This patch talks to your cell phone and it senses what the fluid level in your lungs is.
So the cell phone sends the data off somewhere.
And that information goes somewhere, and you get an alert maybe 6 hours before you would have had a heart attack. You pop a pill and you avoid it. Just extrapolate that to a whole bunch of other diseases. And then you have some more frivolous things, like this patch, which does the same thing. It talks to your cell phone, but it measures your caloric intake and output. And
so if you're on a calorie-controlled diet, that's incredibly useful.
Well, just suppose you're sitting there at dinner and someone serves a dessert and your computer says, you've already exceeded your capacity. Don't eat that.
Yeah, not sure it would stop me, but anyway.
Yeah.
Marty Cooper, it's been a real pleasure meeting you.